Thanks for tuning in to more New England Patriots talk on Pat's Probe following a big Patriot win in LA over the Chargers 27-24. Evan Lazar from CLNS Media joining us as always, and of course, Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. So, Evan, Patriots get a big win that they definitely needed if they had any shot for the postseason. And I thought they were pretty impressive considering Mac Jones got off to a very slow start.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from this game is that the Patriots didn't play their A game on Sunday against the Chargers. They had some penalties, call back some touchdowns. They had some miscues in the red zone that led to points being left on the field by the offense. Defensively, they gave up 3 big plays, the 41-yarder to Keenan Allen, a 75-yard run on the ground. So you have a couple of things here. If you're Bill Belichick, this is in many ways, and when Brady was here in the Brady era, we used to talk about these types of wins as the perfect type of wins for a head coach, because you still get the win, which is the most important thing, but you can go back on Monday and Tuesday and break down all the things that did go wrong and try to fix some of the things that did go wrong. And your team doesn't get complacent because you blew out a good team by 3 touchdowns, right? You played a close one, and you could have easily lost this game if it wasn't for a few things that happened late. They were able to out execute the Chargers in that fourth quarter. So not the Patriots A game, and they still go out there on the road and beat a pretty good Chargers team. That bodes well for the future, because if they can start improving in some of the areas that held them back against the Chargers, then they're going to be a really tough team to play against.
Yeah, because early the Chargers go down, they score the touchdown, and you're figuring, well, let's see what happens here. And then Mac just wasn't playing well early enough, especially late in the first half. It just seemed like he started okay, but then he had that run where just everything, his passes were just completely off. And there was also, I forget which play it was. There was a play in the first half. It was a pretty big call, and they decided it might have been the 4th down. Did they go for it and miss?
Yeah.
And then they threw the football.
Yeah.
I was surprised about that. They didn't run. Instead, they threw the ball. I mean, I hate those corner passes. It's such a low percentage play. It didn't work. Jones wasn't anywhere close to it. But again, the fact was that the defense kept them in the game. And then once the second half started, it looked like the Patriots went from, we're going to try to throw the ball to open up the run game. So when the second half began, they started to run the ball a little bit more, which was important to be effective considering Mac was not on top of his game.
Yeah, look, early on in this game, especially in the red zone sequences, they had back-to-back red zone drives that they got 3 points out of on 2 straight drives, scrimmaging from inside the Los Angeles 6-yard line. So you have to come away with a touchdown in at least one of those 2 situations. And we talked to Josh McDaniels about it this morning, and he said that was one sequence that I would like to have back, right? Going away from the running game there probably didn't make as much sense in hindsight as it did in the moment. And I think what you were saying about them going to the pass first to open up the run is a good indication of what the game plan was, because they knew coming into the game that the Chargers knew our weaknesses are run defense. The Patriots can run the football effectively. They're going to try to run it down our throats. So we knew it. The Chargers knew it. The Patriots knew it. Everybody at SoFi Stadium knew the Patriots are going to try to hand the ball to Damian Harris. So the Chargers, their defense, they basically played their scheme, but they were keying on the run game in the trenches, certainly shooting gaps, swimming guys to try to get guys in the backfield and bodies in the backfield as quickly as possible. And getting that early penetration blows up any run scheme, whether it's gap man blocking or zone blocking. It doesn't really matter. If you get guys 2 yards in the backfield at the snap, it's hard to run the football. So that was clearly the game plan for the Chargers. They did it effectively. But as you mentioned, especially on that 7-minute drive in the fourth quarter that put the game away for the Patriots offense. They go to 2 play action passes in a 3-play sequence. And in both instances, the linebacker level of the Chargers are just flying up the field to stop the run. And they hit plays of 17 and 15 yards to Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry to get themselves in field goal range and put them up 2 possessions and ice the game more or less. So the offense late, you really like the execution, right? And I think something that we've talked about a lot on this show is just the Patriots finishing games. They didn't finish against Miami in week 1. They didn't finish in week 4 against Tampa Bay. They didn't finish against Dallas in week 6. In this game, defensively, they gave up the last touchdown drive and they made it interesting there, but they got the pick 6 earlier on in the fourth quarter. The offense puts together the 7-minute drive to ice the game, and they put the game away. And that's what good teams do. So if you want to take away a positive from the offense, it was certainly their execution late in this game. And defensively, it started out rough, and I thought they did a really good job of adjusting to that first drive. The opening drive, the Chargers, like you said, they go right down the field. They put Keenan Allen in a man coverage situation on J.C. Jackson, and J.C. gets burned by Allen for a 41-yard completion over the top. And then the Patriots shifted. They went to predominantly zone coverages from that point on, and they backed off and they forced Justin Herbert to take the short stuff and live with the checkdowns, and that's how they were so effective at limiting the Los Angeles offense. So a much heavier zone emphasis for Bill Belichick than what you're typically used to seeing with the Patriots. And I wrote about it today on clnsmedia.com, and you start to get into some of the personnel that they have defensively, especially in the secondary. And look, Stephon Gilmore is not here anymore. Jonathan Jones is on injured reserve, their top slot corner. They don't have the cover talent in the back end that they once had to play man coverage 60-65% of the time when you have to match up against Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Jared Cook and Austin Eckler and all these playmakers that a team like the Chargers have. So the Patriots personnel, with their front four being able to get home, with Judon and Barmore being effective in the pass rush, it definitely lends itself a little bit more to them playing some more zone coverage here in the back half of the schedule, especially when they go up against these offenses like a Chargers offense that has so many weapons at their disposal. It's tough to go man-to-man against a team like that. Maybe you like one matchup wherever J.C. Jackson is. You think he can hold his own. But Jalen Mills and Miles Bryant and Jawan Williams and all these guys playing against Pro Bowl level talent at the skill spots for LA is not what you want.
All right, well, let's talk about then this one play that you picked out. And I guess this is going to give us an example of the kind of day that Herbert had.
Yeah, this is a great example of so many different things that the Patriots were able to do against Justin Herbert. So the first thing that you see is they're going to rotate late into a too high safety shell. So initially they think it's a too high shell before the snap. Then when the ball is snapped, they rotate that safety in. So here comes the too high safety. So they're showing too high when the ball is snapped. So that's one iteration of this play, is Herbert's pre-snap read is too high. Then they're going to buzz it. So they're going to rotate that safety into the box, and now it becomes a one high shell. The other element of this that's really important is the outside corners at the bottom and the top of the screen. So at the bottom of the screen is J.C. Jackson, and he has Mike Williams on a vertical match concept. So if the receiver runs a vertical stem, something like a post or a dig route or a go ball, then J.C. Jackson is going to match that player like it's man coverage. But because Mike Williams runs underneath the defense on this drag route, he's going to fall off of it and drop into the deep third and play it like zone. At the top of the screen, you see Jalen Mills work a match coverage because he gets a vertical stem from his receiver, so he's going to play it man-to-man. So as we roll the play a little bit more, you're going to see the Chargers try to run what's called this middle read or dagger concept, where they're going to have these two vertical clear out routes, try to clear out the coverage in the middle of the field, and then hit this dig route at the sticks for the first down. But because J.C. Jackson falls off of his assignment, it allows those middle of the field defenders to stay in their zone assignments and keep it closed off. And J.C. is going to help Adrian Phillips and Devin McCourty stay over the top of these vertical routes down the field. Jalen Mills is in that trail technique, outside leverage, low hip type of technique where he knows he has middle of the field help, and there's just nobody open down the field for Justin Herbert, and he ends up taking off and scrambling, and he gets tackled 5-6 yards short of the sticks. You see Kyle Duggar right there on the Charger logo fall underneath the passing lane to the dig route, and you see that they have the routes down the field covered as well, and there's just no place to go with the football.
Yeah, and a lot of this also has to do with the fact that there was pressure. So
right, so yeah, in the front, and look, this is the key to any zone coverage, right? If you can sit back in zone coverage all day long if you want, but if you give these quarterbacks 4 or 5 seconds to find guys, then it's just too much green grass to cover. Yes. Somebody's going to get open eventually. So if you're going to play zone, I would say a lot of the times in man coverage, the coverage helps the rush, right? Because if you have good man coverage in the back end, you're covering for that first 2.5, 3 seconds solidly. That allows this rush to get home. In zone, the pass rush needs to be effective. Otherwise, the quarterback's got all day to just stand there and make a throw. So they run that game on the left side, that T&E with Matt Judon, and I think that's Kyle Van Noy there at the linebacker level. Yeah. And you just see them stunting on the outside there over the right side. And that gets Judon free to get the pressure on Herbert. And now he's got to make a decision. So just having that all marry up, having the back end control the vertical concept that they're trying to run here, and then having the rush get home like this. This is marrying coverage and rush together perfectly for the Patriots. And then you obviously have those zone defenders on the intermediate short zones. They're there to take the quarterback when he takes off. Kyle Duggar has eyes on the QB on the underneath part of the field, so he easily comes up and makes this tackle, and the Chargers have to punt.
Yeah, I think one of the things also that because we've seen Herbert play enough that he's a very talented kid. There's no question about that. But like even Mahomes, anytime Mahomes is at his best is usually when he also has a little bit of a running game to help him along with it. Right now, he has no running game. So the Chiefs are a very predictable offense. Chargers were able to run the ball a little bit. Now, they had the big run that inflated their stats, of course, the Jackson run, which was almost half of their entire 160 on the ground. But they still were able to run the ball a little bit. Yet, even with a little bit of a running game, Herbert wasn't able to have like a big day against the Patriots secondary that had some holes in it. Is that more of still a young quarterback that is still learning and going up against a genius like Bill Belichick? Other than that, I think Herbert still has a way to go before we can say he's like an elite quarterback. The tools are definitely there, but he has these games like this where he does look still like a very young quarterback.
It reminds me so much, just because the Patriots have faced him twice a year for a couple of years now. It reminds me so much of young Josh Allen, right? In that Josh Allen, his rookie year was a disaster for many reasons. But once he got into that second, third season, when you started to see the upward trajectory for Josh Allen, Belichick was still his nemesis, right? Belichick was still the one guy that could scheme it up and confuse him enough to keep him off balance. And now, last year, I don't know how much stock you put into the 2020 Patriots defense, because that defense was atrocious. But you look at it again this year, and they don't play the Bills until December. But it'll be interesting to see, because Herbert and Allen are built basically exactly the same, right? They're both 6'6", 225, huge cannon arms, great athletes, have all the physical tools in the world. But a lot of the things that Belichick does, and I would say what it mostly is Belichick's ability to make man look like man, make zone look like man, and zone look like vice
Sure.
versa is what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
right? And being able to disguise it in the back end, so you don't know if it's one high or two high. You don't know if it's man or zone. And then the ball is snapped. And now all of a sudden the quarterback has to make all of these instinctive reactions on the fly. He can't just get up to the line of scrimmage and say, I'm going here with the football because they're in this coverage and they're in this look. The Patriots are so good at making it all muddy for the quarterback and forcing him to make post-snap decisions constantly. And that's really difficult to do for a lot of young QBs. Mac Jones had issues with it on Sunday against a Charger defense that does basically the same exact thing with Brandon Staley's scheme of changing it up a lot on you, rotating a lot after the snap. And those types of coverages give quarterbacks problems, and they force them to hold the football. And whenever you can get the quarterback to hold the football in the pocket, it allows the rush to get home, and it allows the whole thing to marry up.
And it still makes you just wonder what in the world happened in the Houston game. I mean, here's a Houston
really
team and a quarterback that's done nothing before and since, and he has this monster game against Bill Belichick.
Yeah, so I actually wrote about a lot of this today, and the Patriots leaning towards a little bit more zone coverage in the back end compared to man-to-man, because I just mentioned earlier, no Gilmore, no John Jones anymore, no Jason McCourty anymore. They just don't have the man corners that they once had, right? 2018-19, when the Patriots defense was really good, especially in the 18 playoff run, they had so many guys that they could throw at you in man coverage. They had Gilmore, they had JC, they had Jason McCourty, they had John Jones, they had safeties that could play coverage and play man like Patrick Chung. So they had all these guys that could play man-to-man across the board, and they could sit in man-to-man. Now, against the Texans and Davis Mills, they played a lot of that man-to-man coverage, and they just thought that Davis Mills and the Texans didn't have the arsenal to really expose them in it, and he did anyway. And from that point on, there has been a pretty line of demarcation of the Patriots switching to more zone ever since that game, because I think they looked at it and they said, we don't have the personnel in the secondary anymore to just match up one-on-one across the board. We're going to have to do something a little bit differently. Our strength is in our front seven. So a lot of these zone-based schemes that we've seen in the past, they've always had great front fours, right? Seattle, these teams, they always get after the quarterback. And the Patriots now have Judon, they have Barmore, Josh Uche, second-year player, he can rush the passer a little bit. Dietrich Wise can rush. So you have all these guys that can effectively rush the quarterback, and not to mention the linebacker level, guys like Van Noy, Hightower that can blitz. And you put all these guys in there, and you could try to muddy it up with the pass rush, and then you're able to play zone on the back end and get away with it. The biggest issue with zone coverage that you have is when the quarterback has time to throw, then it's really easy for the receivers to move around on the back end and eventually get uncover and get open. And the kind of chess match of it is if you zone blitz, now you're pulling out a guy from the coverage structure to blitz. So instead of covering that back end with 7 guys, you're only covering the back end with 6, and now there's more open space and there's more green grass. So that's the yin and the yang, or the chess match, if you will, about zone coverage. And the Patriots were able to get home with 3 and 4 man rushes against the Chargers, and then still sit back in those 7-8-man coverage shells and keep everything covered up on the back end.
And of course, the big play of the game was the Phillips interception, the pick 6. I mean, that was the game. And you had the feeling, even before that interception, that the Patriots were pretty much, they were in a good shape. They were in good shape because they had pretty much stifled the offense. There weren't any big plays from the Chargers. You can kind of tell by that point Herbert was having one of those not so good days. And you kind of felt that maybe the Chargers would come out of here with like a 20-17 win. But then the pick 6 happened, and just like that, they pretty much had what they needed, including the field goal drive that really sealed it late. But that was the big play that Herbert just gave away, which again, the interception was just so bad. It just shows you even a quarterback as talented as Herbert can get screwed up mentally.
Yeah, and ironically, the pick 6 was man coverage. It wasn't zone. It was one of the
That's what
few
screwed
times
him up.
Yeah, it was one of the few times late in the game that they actually did go back to man, and what they did was they knew that it was third down. They knew that the Chargers were going to try to get the ball to Keenan Allen, so they bracketed Keenan Allen out of the slot, and they played what's called one cross, where the man coverage defender funnels Keenan Allen into the safety help in the middle of the field, and they cut it off together. One guy cutting off the crossing route, one guy playing the underneath route, and they were able to take Keenan Allen away. And you see on the play, Herbert is staring right at Keenan Allen. He wants to get the ball to 13, and as soon as he recognizes that Keenan Allen is double covered, he comes off of Keenan Allen and just kind of flips it out in the flat to his tight end, just kind of not even thinking about it, right? Just, oh, first read's covered, let's get to the second and let's get the football out of here type of thing. And Jared Cook obviously just wasn't ready for the ball, and Adrian Phillips was. But you look at that play and you see the Patriots coverage just really being on their P's and Q's, as they were on that third down play that we just broke down in the zone coverage, because Jalen Mills is on Keenan Allen with the inside help. He plays his technique perfectly to funnel him into the middle of the field, into the help, and they really forced that interception by taking the initial read out, right? Because the flat throw to Jared Cook was not where he wanted to go with the football. He wanted to go to Keenan Allen, and the Patriots did a good job in that play of taking him away.
And offensively, another one, of course, the mistakes early that was just a killer. And I don't know about you when you were watching the game, but on Harris's touchdown that was called back, it's the thing I can't stand about. Look, I'm not saying it's easy, but when you're a play-by-play guy and you've done it countless times, you already know, especially when there's a big play, that you need to look for the flag. Everybody does that. And Ian Eagle waits 10 seconds basically after the touchdown to let everybody know that it's coming, but there's a flag on the field. It's just very irritating. I don't know if did you pick it up before that, or were you kind of surprised like everyone else that there was a flag late? Not to say it wasn't a flag, but it just seemed like there was, and I know I'm probably bitching about something I shouldn't bitch about, but it was a nitpick on me that I hate that when that happens, when your team scores a touchdown or they were my 4-star pick. So I'm rooting for the Chargers, I'm rooting for the Patriots, so I had money on them. And that was it was very disappointing to see it called back. That was the Heron penalty, correct?
Yeah. So Heron hooked him, and it was a hold. It looked he got it around his waist and he hooked him. It looked like Heron tried to let go before the flag was thrown, but he just got too much of the defender to not throw the flag, and that one was a killer. Isaiah Wynn was called for a hold too on a 23-yard run by Damian Harris. So the Patriots only ran for 3.6 yards a carry. They ran it 39 times and didn't gain a lot of yards per carry. But you take out a 28-yard touchdown by Damian Harris and a 23-yard run later on in the game, that's another 50-plus yards plus the TD. That makes the numbers look a whole lot better. Sure. So the holding calls were a killer, and you can't just count those because holds are holds, and that's why a lot of those big runs happen, is because guys are holding. But it's frustrating, I think, from a Patriots perspective, because it did feel like there were a lot of holds on the other side that maybe didn't go the Patriots way exactly. And I know a lot of Patriots fans were aggravated about how often Matt Judon, who lived in the backfield in this game, he had 10 quarterback pressures, couple sacks. I mean, he was all over Justin Herbert the entire game, and they probably could have called 3 or 4 holds on Matt Judon also on the Charger offensive line. They finally got a couple of them late. The one that Belichick challenged, there was 2 holds on the play, and they only called one of the 2 holds, and the one that they called wasn't in the end zone, but the one that was the phantom hold that wasn't called was in the end zone. So Belichick saw the hold on the right tackle. He thought that's what the call was on, but they actually called the left guard for holding and not the right tackle. So that's why the wasted challenge. And Belichick didn't seem too pleased about the fact that it wasn't communicated to him who exactly the hold was on, because he said, if I had known it was on the left guard, then I never would have wasted the challenge. I thought it was on the right tackle.
How did the offensive line do generally?
The Patriots offensive line, they were better in pass protection. And early on in this game, the pass protection wasn't great, and I think that contributed to Mac's internal clock getting sped up and the timing being thrown off a little bit on some of his throws. But they evened out in the end. And look, the Patriots are doing a great job, and I think a lot of people might look down upon the offensive line for these strategies, but I actually think it's just good coaching, right, and just good football. They do a great job of chipping guys coming out of the backfield or with the tight ends, and when you're going up against a guy like Joey Bosa, you don't want to just give him 25 one-on-one reps against your right tackle, because he will just absolutely take over the game. So the Patriots, they chipped, they didn't necessarily double Bosa, but every time the running back to his side or the tight end to his side left out in the pattern, Joey Bosa was getting a forearm shiver to the gut, by the running back on the way out. And that type of thing definitely wears a guy down, and that's effective. And then you sprinkle in the play action passes, which makes it harder to pass rush as well. And you can't really pin your ears back in when you have to respect the run. So the Patriots do a nice job of avoiding what I would call traditional dropbacks, right? Where there's no play action, there's no threat to run the football. There's just 5 guys blocking 4 or 5 guys for the offense. They don't get caught into too many of those situations, and that allows them to mask some of the one-on-one deficiencies in their offensive line.
Now, Herron's name was called, so what was he playing in the game for?
Sounded like Isaiah Wynn got hurt or winded or something like that.
So he only played a few snaps.
Yeah, he only played a few snaps, and then Wynn came back in the game. And look, the stabilizing of the offensive line has been nice, I would say, over the last couple of weeks since they moved Mike Onwenu back to right tackle. And I asked Josh McDaniels about that today. What took so long, right? Trent Brown gets injured in week 1. We know how good Mike Onwenu looked at right tackle in his rookie season. He's a very, very good right tackle. I mean, if he develops at that position, he might one day be an elite right tackle. He's a really good player there. But they see him as a natural guard because of his body type and his build. He's 340 pounds, and he's 6'3", 340. He's just compact and stout and built like an interior lineman. He's not built like a tackle. So the Patriots view his long-term future at guard, but it got to the point with the offensive line that Kajust and Haran and Durant and these guys that they were trying out at right tackle just weren't cutting it. And if the Patriots were going to turn their season around and start winning some football games, they needed to make the move and put Onwenu back at right tackle. So that's what they've done.
And that was definitely the right move. Now, as far as our Mac Jones play of the week, what are we going to? This is going to be the long pass to Aguilar.
Yeah, so this is the deep ball to Aguilar, and this hits every week. I feel like I come on, Greg, and I say Mac Jones has a new best downfield throw of his career, right? And a couple weeks ago, it was the Kendrick Bourne touchdown with Trayvon Diggs in coverage. Then last week he hit Kendrick Bourne on the go route down the left sideline, and now he's hitting Nelson Aguilar, and that's great because Nelson Aguilar is the guy that the Patriots signed to that contract to get downfield plays. He's the deep threat in this offense. So to see them start hitting on some of these deep throws is really impressive. And I think the most important thing about this play, though, is what Mac Jones does before he even throws the football. So if you look at the coverage, they have a single high safety shell. Derwin James is playing post safety. And I think that's the one thing that Mac saw that pre-snap and he said, Derwin's usually down here, right? He's usually in the box or closer to the line of scrimmage. And the fact that I have him at deep safety where he's probably not as comfortable as when they have him closer to the line, I'm going to try to attack this shell and try to go deep here to Nelson Aguilar. And what ends up happening is when you roll the play a little bit, you can see when Mac gets into his drop back, when he's dropping back, he opens to the left-hand side, right? And he opens his hips and he points his eyes to the left. And that's going to get Derwin James in the middle of the field to commit his hips to the left, thinking, oh, he's going in that direction. And then he steps up in the pocket and comes back to the right and throws the dime to Nelson Aguilar. So the post-safety manipulation is really what's key here. Getting that safety to open up to the left and getting him to commit left and then coming back to the right is how he body, gets Aguilar open essentially on this deep ball. And you see that ability to elude and step up in the pocket. He gets some pressure off the left-hand side, and he's able to just take that step up and move up in the pocket and drop the ball in the bucket. So those types of throws from the pocket, that's next level pocket quarterback play, right? You have the safety manipulation, you avoid the rush, and then you drop the dime down the field on the accurate throw. So those are the types of plays that we're starting to see Mac make more and more of. And I think early on in the season, a lot of people had this indication that he was going to be a dink and dunk, short throw quarterback. Well, over the last couple of weeks, he's definitely started to hunt with the football more down the field and trust what he's seeing a little bit more to make these throws downfield, and he's become more effective on the deep ball. We're still waiting for the efficiency to go up. You know, this week he was 1 for 4. Last week, I think he was also 1 for 4 or 1 for 5. So he's hitting on 1 a game right now, and they need to hit more than just 1. But the intent is there, the aggressiveness is there, the willingness is there, the process is there. Now they just need to fine tune it and make sure that they can hit some more of them.
Well, and it's also, we talked about how inconsistent or inaccurate he was in the first half. So for him to be able, as a young quarterback, to go into the locker room, you know, reassess, come back out, and then look much better and more comfortable. Again, it wasn't perfect, but to make a couple of plays that he needed to make, especially late when you were talking about some of those big play action passes that he completed when they were starting to run the ball a little bit more effectively, which again, if they don't run the ball, he's probably not going to have the type of game that he had generally, which was pretty decent. And actually, it's kind of funny when I don't think I've seen this very often, when both quarterbacks go 18 of 35. And there's only 5 yards separating them in the passing game. The big difference is that Jones had no turnovers. Now, he didn't have touchdown passes, but if you run the football, play pretty good defense, I want the 0-0. I don't want the 2-2, because the 2 interceptions, you can't have 2 interceptions unless you're going to throw 5 or 6 touchdown passes.
Yeah. So look, the 3 boxes checked in this game that all add up to him being plenty good enough for the Patriots to win this game. The first one is he missed 1 on the goal line, so I'll nitpick him there. But for the most part, he hit the layups, right? He made the easy throws. He made the throws where the scheme presented him really open receivers down the field. He hit guys in stride. He got the football where the football needed to go, and he was able to make some of the easy ones. The second thing is he hit this deep ball to Nelson Aguilar. He hit the 2 throws on the fourth quarter drive. So he had some good downfield throws as well to sprinkle in there. And then the most important thing above all else is he took care of the football. Yep. So you add those 3 things together, and this was a C+ effort by Mac Jones, and that might be being a little bit generous. The downfield accuracy was bad. It was his worst accuracy in terms of actual ball placement on target throws in his entire season so far. So he threw the ball all over the map in a lot of respects and didn't have great control over the football. But he didn't turn it over. He made the plays when they presented themselves, and he was good late with that fourth quarter drive. Yep. And that is when you can win. And I keep on comparing him to Brady, and I hate doing that, but that's like that's the marquee, right? Sure. That's the line everybody's trying to get to. And as great of a performer as Brady was in so many different games in his Patriot career, there was, I would say, maybe 25% of his wins with the Patriots, he just did enough to win the game. It wasn't his best game. It wasn't his A+ stuff, but he didn't kill them, right? He didn't shoot themselves in the foot. He didn't have the fatal flaw, and the other team had the pick or had the fumble or had the big turnover, and the game flipped on that. And this is exactly how the Patriots won so many games with Tom Brady, was just being good enough offensively when you don't have your A game. And I thought Charles Davis on the broadcast summed it up perfectly. It's like an ace pitcher in baseball. Not every game that Chris Sale pitches is going to be a no-hitter, right? Some games he's just not going to have his best stuff. But can he gut out 6 innings, right? Can he get through the game and be able to keep his team in it and put them in a position to win? That was the type of game that both Mac and Justin Herbert had, and Mac played the cleaner game than Justin Herbert at the end of the day, and that's all the Patriots needed.
That's what my man Max Scherzer did 2 years ago in Game 7 of the World Series.
Right. Sometimes it's not going to be the perfect
No.
game, right? You just have to have your
keep your team in it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Right. Yeah.
And let's also close out by keeping everybody up to speed with another key component of why the Patriots are successful, and that's special teams. Because Falk again is always money. Olszewski was just I thought it was one of his better return games of the season, to tell you the truth. And overall the special teams did a really good job.
Yeah, special teams has owned the Chargers 2 years in a row. Last year against the Chargers, Gunner had a 70-yard punt return touchdown, and I think they might have blocked the punt also in that game too. So they dominate the chart. And this is a whole new coaching staff. So it's I don't know if it's just the Patriots personnel on special teams is just better than the Chargers, but it's not like it's the same coaching staff as last year. And they just keep on owning the same guys. They have a whole new staff in there, and they owned them again on special teams. And right now, according to Football Outsiders, the Patriots have the 6th best special teams unit in the entire NFL, which puts together field goals, punts, coverage, all of it, right?
Yeah.
And they are every year in and year out, are in the top 10, top 5 of the league in the kick game. And it's important because Gunner in this game averaged 20 yards per punt return.
Right.
He had 3 punt returns of over 20 yards and 4 over 10 yards. And that's field position. You know, you punt it back to the Patriots after a quick drive, and Gunner returns it 20 yards. Now all of a sudden Mac Jones is starting on the 40 or the 45, and he only has so far to go to get at least a field goal on the drive. So Gunner is a difference maker. I know he's not the sexiest name. I know he doesn't play on offense, and that irks a lot of people of why we carrying this player that only returns kicks and doesn't do anything else on the team. Well, that's because he can flip field position and do it in a hurry. And he now, if you look at the course of NFL history, guys that have returned at least 50 punt returns in the NFL, Gunnar Olszewski is number 1 in punt return average in league history.
Nobody would guess that.
13.2 yards per return. So that he's well on his way again to being the All-Pro nod at the returner position. Again, this year he was the first team All-Pro returner last year. If he can house one here before the end of the season, he's going to he's going to be the All-Pro again.
And then the other thing too, and we've talked about this because the trade deadline, we as we're recording the show, is about an hour or so away. And if there are any deals, we'll talk about it. But the one thing that we focused on was that primary number 2 running back that the team just does not have. And so Stevenson got the bulk of the work in this game, and he had some moments. And he looks a lot more comfortable, no question, now, and he's not turning the ball over, so that's important. But you do kind of get the feeling that, you know, shouldn't they just try to add another guy? Because it's an important part of their team.
They're a body short at running back, no matter what way you slice it, whether you like Ramondre Stevenson or J.J. Taylor or not. They are a veteran back short. And you look back at the Sony Michel trade now that James White is no longer, he's on injured reserve and out for the year. And in hindsight, it's always 2020. But if they had Sony Michel on this team, you would feel really, really good about this offense and their ability to run the football. If, knock on wood, for all the Patriots fans listening, you can all knock on wood with me. If Damian Harris gets hurt, the Patriots are in big trouble on offense. They cannot afford for him to get hurt at this point. This is the last chance over the next hour and 15 minutes that they have to get a Damian Harris insurance policy, because if Brandon Bolden's the guy that has to carry the ball 20 times because Damian Harris is hurt.
Yeah.
And I like Ramondre a lot. I think he's a really talented player. But the one thing that you notice with him now that he's had the fumbles and had the yips and stuff, he's a little tentative right now running the football because he's so concerned about ball security that he's not just playing, right? He's not just playing freely and hitting the hole hard and decisive with his cuts and getting into the open field and running with it. Everything right now is, you can tell he's in the back of his head. He's going, don't fumble, don't fumble, don't fumble, don't fumble. And if you play that position or any skill position like that, worried about the worst possible scenario all the time, you're just not as explosive. You're not as effective. It's like a quarterback constantly worried about the interception, right? You just are going to take the check down every single time because you're too afraid to throw the pick down the field. So if the Patriots were to make a move in the next hour and 15 minutes, receiver, running back, cornerback would be the three spots that I would look at, but I don't expect them to make any massive splash. They're not going to trade for Allen Robinson or anything crazy like that.
And because really the biggest running back name that you think could go is Marlon Mack, and he hasn't been traded yet.
He has not been traded yet, and I think the biggest concern that you have with adding a running back into the Patriots system, and this is why the Patriots typically redshirt rookie running backs. It's a very complex offense for running backs because they have so many different responsibilities, from blitz pickup to how they read out the runs to all these different things that they have to handle. And if you have a guy, even a veteran like Marlon Mack, who's never been in the system before, you wonder how quickly he can really catch on and be able to contribute. So
that's why Rex Burkhead makes a lot of sense.
Makes so much sense. It's just Houston, for some reason, is doing some weird things down there where, like, they're trying to hold on to some of these veteran players like Cooks and Burkhead, and for no reason. I have no idea why. But that would be one that would make the most sense for sure.
Didn't they trade somebody, Houston, recently?
Yeah, they just traded Mark Ingram. So they already
they made a trade.
Yeah, they made their running back trade, and it wasn't
probably.
Nick Caserio has to have a lot of love for Rex Burkhead.
I guess.
So he goes a ways back with that guy.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Even though we don't I don't see him playing for Houston. I don't know how much time he gets for a bad football team. It doesn't make any sense. So we'll see if that holds up over the next hour and a half. When we talk next week, it's on to Carolina. Good time to take on the Panthers. Because even though they won last week, it wasn't because of their offense. And the defense, Gilmore plays, but Ridley, for the second time in the last month, decides, I got personal reasons I can't play. And that just killed them because it came out of nowhere and their offense just could not go anywhere. It wasn't like they knew Ridley wasn't going to be there for the Jet game. Plus, the Jets are not the Panthers defensively right now. So, and then with Gilmore in there too, in his first game, Atlanta didn't have anything going for him. But Carolina still, everything's about their defense. It's going to be interesting with Gilmore on the other side, no question about that. But the offense is just bad. Without McCaffrey, the quarterback situation is terrible, and I can't imagine the Panthers are going to score much at all.
This is a great Carolina defensive front, though. This front is really, really difficult to block. I mean, Brian Burns, Derek Brown, Daquan Jones, who's been a really good player for a long time in Tennessee. These Shaq Thompson at the second level, Hassan Reddick, who I think leads the league in sacks right now, or is among the league leaders in sacks. So this front can absolutely get after it. And we know the Patriots' issues that they've had on the offensive line. They have stabilized for the most part with moving Onwenu back to right tackle, but this offensive line still isn't great. It's okay, but it still isn't great. And this is a very, very good Carolina defense. Phil Snow runs just like they do on offense. They have two college coordinators, two guys that spend most of their careers in college, and they have a college head coach, obviously, in Matt Rule too. So they run more of like a zone blitz scheme than a man-to-man style system, but they can get after the quarterback, and they are going to make it really, really difficult. And they're not going to allow Mac Jones to just sit on his spot all day long and throw the ball cleanly from the pocket. He's going to,
because they need turnovers.
The ball under pressure. Yeah,
the way their offense is playing so poorly, Carolina has to get turnovers. If the Patriots are turnover free, on Sunday, they're not losing the football game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Belichick does against Darnold. Obviously, he's faced Darnold plenty of times in the past, and we remember the see and ghost thing with the zeros and the amoeba fronts. But the Patriots haven't done a ton of that since the 19 season. They haven't really gone to that package a whole lot, and I don't even know with this current personnel if that's necessarily the best way to go about it, because you do have DJ Moore, you do have Robbie Anderson, you do have some receivers that can get up the field and beat you in man coverage. So this could be another let's just flood the secondary with 7-8 guys back there and make Darnold read through it and just kind of sit in the pocket and read through the entire thing, and hopefully the rush gets home. I would assume that's what they do, and without Christian McCaffrey, I mean, this is a nice matchup for the Patriots defense, and they should be able to win this game. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I think everybody will probably predict 17-13 type of outcome. I think the Patriots should be able to win this game, and you look at, we talked about the Chargers game as being sort of a must win to get their season in a direction towards the playoffs after they beat the doors off the Jets. But if you just go ahead and throw that win back to just throw it away against Carolina, and you lose against Carolina, then the win against the Chargers and all this momentum from the 2 straight wins goes right out the door. So the Patriots still have to take care of business. They have their next 3 games are against Carolina, a banged up Cleveland team, and then Atlanta on a Thursday night. They could win 5 in a row.
They could.
Conceivably. They have Cleveland at home, and that Atlanta game on Thursday night might be difficult just because of the short week.
Where is it?
It's in Atlanta.
Okay. Well, they haven't won a game in Atlanta yet.
Yeah, and they might not have Calvin Ridley, which will help. But Cleveland and Carolina are 2 very, very physical teams. And then you have a short week right after that. The Patriots still haven't had their bye yet. So that Atlanta game is a classic trap game. But once they get through that Atlanta game, they do have the Bills twice. They do have Tennessee. They have some tougher matchups. Indianapolis is a pesky team. They have some tougher matchups a little bit in that weeks 12 to 14, 15 range.
That's why you want to eat up and gobble as many wins as you can. Go on this roll right now.
Yeah, they have these 3 winnable games, and they have the Dolphins and the Jaguars to close out the season. So you would think that that's 4 or 5 wins right there if you're being optimistic about the Patriots' chances this year. And if they can get 4 or 5 wins out of that, that's getting them to 8 or 9. And then you split some of the tougher games that they have left on the schedule, and all of a sudden you're talking about a 10 or 11 win football team.
I was actually going to take him as my 5-star. The only reason I didn't was because the last time I did that was the Houston game. And I was like, I'm not doing that again. I like them a lot. They're getting 5 from a team they beat 45-0 last year. Yeah. And I'm a big guy when it comes to that. Like, whenever I see a team that's favored over a team that they just haven't beaten for years, I always go against the team that's getting the points in that scenario. And it held up again with the Patriots winning. But they're only like a 3-point favorite against Carolina. They're just a better team than Carolina. So.
Yeah, it is absolutely crazy that the Patriots continue to have the Chargers number, because the Chargers have now gone through, I think, 3 coaching changes over the last 5 or 6 years. In 18, the Patriots beat them in the divisional round of the playoffs at home by 3 touchdowns. They ran all over them. They ran for 200 yards. Brady threw for 3 TDs.
That was like Phillip Rivers' last chance.
Yeah, right. Everybody coming into the game said the Chargers had the more talented team and they were going to beat the Patriots. And I remember being at that game. It was maybe 20 degrees out at best, and you have these guys coming in from San Diego and it's 20 degrees out, and I'm looking at the Chargers on the sideline and looking at them pregame out on the field, and they are freezing. Like, they are freezing. They're standing there. They're all wearing the big coats. They're all shivering left and right. And I was like, this game is already over. Like, they can't play. They're not going to be ready for the cold, and the game is already over. Yeah. So they beat them in 18. They beat them they beat the doors off them. They beat them by like 3 touchdowns. And then last year they beat them 45-0. And this year they beat them again. Yeah. So no matter who's that quarterback, who's the coach, it just doesn't. If there's a lightning bolt on the helmet, the Patriots are winning the game.
Yeah. So and it's not even a divisional, matchup, which is also kind of strange because it's not like they play every year, but it doesn't matter. Right now they have played them 3 of the last 4 years, and they've owned them. So if they play in the playoffs again for some reason, that's a good thing. And but again, overall, You mentioned the Dolphins late with Jacksonville, so that's good. Uh,
Yes.
I find it funny how everybody is just all of a sudden thinking that Brian Flores doesn't know how to coach. Because here's a guy, don't you love it when coaches elevate bad teams, and then the next year, if they struggle, it's the coach's fault. Like, don't
Right.
you remember the crappy, talented team he took over and got
Yeah.
them to levels that nobody thought that it was possible? They haven't improved their talent that much over the past year. They're a little bit more talented, but they haven't improved their. There's still a very bad offense. They got still a very bad offensive line. They got a quarterback that can't stay healthy. I just think
Yeah.
it's hilarious if they think Brian Flores is not the guy there in Miami. He's definitely the guy that deserves to be there. The big question is Deshaun Watson going to get traded? And at this point, it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah, Adam Schefter is saying now that there's no Deshaun Watson trade happening today. That until he gets his legal situation figured out, he's untouchable for all these teams right now.
Yeah.
So eventually, I think Deshaun Watson does end up in Miami. I've heard from people down there
Or Carolina.
that the organization with the Dolphins hasn't really been sold on Tua for quite a bit of time at this point. This predates this season, going back to last year after he was coming off the hip injury and he just didn't look like the same guy that won the national championship at Alabama.
Maybe you shouldn't have drafted him then.
That's gonna look. Justin Herbert and Josh Allen could be, that could be the quarterbacks in the AFC East could have Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones. Instead, they have Tua, and that team looks like it has the worst quarterback maybe of the four teams, depending on what happens with Wilson. So it's
this is Mike White's team now.
It's funny because everybody was ragging on the Patriots defense for struggling initially against Mike White. And Mike White, other than the couple of picks that he had against New England late, was actually playing pretty well against the Patriots in that game when he came in. And everybody was saying, oh, the Patriots defense is crap. Look at what Mike White did. And then look at what he did to the Bengals. So maybe Mike White's just good.
I was going to ask you, it was one of the questions I forgot to ask you on the show last week. I was going to say, hey, as a Patriot fan, what did you think about the end of the game, the second half, and Mike White? And get your feeling, but I forgot to ask it. And then I figured, I guess it's not that big of a deal. It was garbage time. And then he has this. And I don't tell you the truth. I don't know how good he's going to be, but I don't think it's a fluke because the kid's got talent. He always had talent in college. He's an accurate type of rhythm passer. And the problem with the Jets offensively has been clearly the quarterback situation because he's just too young. So
there's two things about Mike White. First of all, I remember watching him in college for the draft because he was a nice day three Patriot type of quarterback, a rhythm, accurate thrower, as you said, that could win from the pocket and do some of the things the Patriots like to do. But you notice what the Jets offense, looks like when the train is on schedule.
Yes.
Right? Things are just happening when they're supposed to happen, and the scheme is being run the way it's supposed to be run. Wilson is extremely talented, but he plays out of structure. He plays playground football, and Mike White comes in and he actually runs a system that it's LaFleur, right? The offensive coordinator. That LaFleur is trying to run, and it looks a lot cleaner as a result because he's just a point guard, right? He's just sitting in the pocket and he's hitting A and he's hitting X and he's hitting circle and he's hitting Y, and that just like it's Madden. And when you have a quarterback that does that, there's a lot to be said for that. That's why the Patriots drafted Mac Jones, because they hope that he can just be a guy that's just going to push the right buttons when the guys are open. And that's exactly what the Jets see with Mike White. Is the big difference is Wilson can make the off-platform rolling to his right, 70-yard throw down the field like he did against the Titans and win games, a couple of games a year like that. But in order to consistently succeed in the league, you have to win from the pocket and have to win from in-structure playmaking. And that's something I think that gets so lost in draft analysis these days because everybody's so caught up in Patrick Mahomes and trying to chase the downfield wow type of throws and isn't focused on the most important thing about quarterback play, which is still accuracy and decision making from the pocket. The guys that make the best decisions and make the most accurate throws from in structure offense are the guys that win MVPs and win Super Bowls. Ask Brady, ask Rodgers, all these guys that do that at a high level. And when you're chasing Patrick Mahomes and there's only one Patrick Mahomes, you get a whole lot of Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and these guys that just don't operate well within the confines of a scheme. They only operate well when everything breaks down and they're able to just let their athleticism take over.
And it's also, it shows you the difference between when you throw these quarterbacks into, NFL football day one, as opposed to even Mahomes. Hey, he gets a start, at the end of the season as a rookie, and then he's ready. It's just like Mike White. Mike White has sat around for 3 years learning the NFL, understanding these principles. So when he's finally given the chance, it's already slowed down for him, even though he hasn't played a lot. I think that's the thing and I understand why they do it, because now they only have a short window with these quarterbacks before I got to pay them I got to make the decision of whether to pay him a lot of money. I get that. But I think, look, if I'm the Jets and Mike White plays well, play him the rest of the season and let Zach sit. That doesn't mean Zach ain't going to start next year. There's nothing wrong with sitting on the bench if you have a competent quarterback playing for you right now.
It was funny because when they drafted Zach Wilson, my thought was, okay, I mean, I'm not scared of Zach Wilson as a Patriots fan, but 2 to 3, 4 years down the line, this is a guy that I could see developing into a really special talent. But who's the veteran quarterback on the roster that's going to be the bridge? Yeah. There was no veteran quarterback. There was no Cam Newton. There was no Alex Smith like in Kansas City with Pat Mahomes. And you look at Mahomes and you look at BYU ran a little bit of a different system. They were more West Coast based than just air raid like Texas Tech was with Mahomes. But they ran a system at BYU that was very, very quarterback friendly and very much a college style system in the way that they schemed up deep plays down the field and kept the quarterback clean by moving the pocket. You can't just roll the quarterback out every single play in the NFL. It just doesn't work. Defenses figure it out. You have to have different types of things that you can throw at somebody. And it just feels like Zach Wilson can only succeed right now at the NFL level playing one way. And throwing the ball one way. The second that he's got to do something else, that's when it kind of goes off the rails for him. So I think you are dead on that they should really consider thinking about whether they use the injury as the excuse of why he was benched or whatever, just sitting him down for the rest of the year and letting him learn behind Mike White and hold the clipboard. That'll probably do a lot better for his long-term success in the NFL.
And if he plays well on Thursday night, I wouldn't even wait. And I'd give him, all right, you want a little extra money? We'll sign you for a couple more years. Because the kid has made barely $2 million in his entire career, in his 4-year NFL career. You offer him I don't know, maybe $4 or $5 million for 2 years, for maybe $10 million over 2 years. He's going to jump at it. Yeah. And then, that's not a lot of money for a guy that could be a really good bridge quarterback for your, franchise quarterback. So,
yeah, and a really good backup too.
Absolutely.
Eventually, I think is a guy that when you look at backup quarterbacks, you just want a guy that can come off the bench and make some throws, right? A guy that has the talent to be able to still prop up the offense a little bit. And that's what Mike White can do. I look at him and I see a great bridge/backup. I think he's going to be in the league for 10 years as a backup quarterback.
He could be. And you know how NFL teams are. If the Jets don't sign him as soon as possible, if he gets on the open market, they're not going to be able to pay him because they're not going to pay a guy when they've got their franchise quarterback, supposed franchise quarterback. That's why it'd be a very smart move to lock him up as soon as you can before he reaches. Again, let's see what he does on Thursday night. But, I don't think it was the Colts are definitely not playing the defense that the Bengals have played so far. And I don't think the Bengals should be looked at in a negative fashion either in the way the game went. It wasn't like they played awful. It's just that it just shows you the difference in the NFL. When you get good quarterback play, it's amazing.
Yeah, Absolutely.
And when the Jets were able to put C.J. Mosley at linebacker and get Jared Davis back, as opposed to the Patriot game when they had rookies at linebacker, and that was ugly. All right, so next week we'll talk about the Carolina Panthers and see if the Patriots can win 3 straight. And we'll see if there's any last-minute trades. If there are, we'll talk about it. Evan, appreciate it as always. Patriots Press Pass. The next show is when?
Actually, in about an hour, we're going to do a trade deadline special about a whole lot of nothing. So if you want to hear the trade deadline special show on Patriots Press Pass, it will probably be up by the time you listen to this show.
Sounds good. Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, Greg.